Greetings everyone. So welcome to Woke Self-Awareness for Online Communication. My name is Alicia Phillips. I am the Portsmouth Campus Student Center Associate Director. I'm here with my colleague, Sarah Hare.
Hey everybody, thanks for chiming in today. We're looking forward to an awesome conversation.
And with Professor Lassiter, Communications Professor here on the Portsmouth campus. Happy October, everybody. It's October the 1st. October is LGBT History Month. It's also Phil Am History and Heritage Month. It's also Global Diversity Month, Breast Cancer Awareness. There's so many recognitions each month, but we bring these things to your attention because we want to be mindful of what we're creating and co-creating in the community. And there's lots of great engagement information in your virtual student center about what's happening and about the greater Hampton Roads community as we connect at Tidewater Community College. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. This is our second Emerging Leaders Series session of the academic year. We're really excited to feature Professor Lassiter again on this topic of effective online communication, especially in this COVID season where, again, we are virtually learning. And without further ado, I'd like to give her the floor.
Hello, everybody. It's so great to see your smiling faces / names today. I am so excited to speak with each of you all today. So, you know, one thing about me, and I'm going to pull up my slides in a second, but I'm a communication professor, as you guys have learned. And so I like to do that, communicate. So I want to encourage you as well. Everybody turn on your cameras. Just kidding. I know some of you may not be able to, no worries, but feel free to communicate, to share, to talk in the, okay, hey there. I mean, I was just kidding, but I'd love to see your smiling faces as well. But yes, feel free to put some things in the chat. I am going to have some slides today and some points, but the thing is that I want this to be something where you can walk away from and have some tips, some tricks, something that you can actually use. So also, if there's something that we're not talking about in the notes that you want to discuss, I want to make sure that we allow and create space to do that. And yeah, I want this to be beneficial for you. All right. Okay, so everybody should be able to see my screen today. We are going to be talking about effective online communication. Awesome. If you can give me some thumbs up or something in the comments to let me know you can see and hear me okay. So as mentioned, my name is Professor Elyssa Lassiter, and I will also share a little bit about my background. And one thing that I love about the TCC family is that, we may be professors or members of the staff or things like that, or even our students, but you do also a lot of other things in the community, which I think it's always fun to get to learn about some of the things that you do as well. So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, and then I want to hear about you. So I've been an adjunct communication professor here at TCC since 2016, moved out to Virginia. I'm originally from Mississippi, which I actually happen to be at now, which is very cool. The world of remote learning and things like that may allow us to do that sometimes and to be flexible. But I got married in 2016 and he was in the Navy. So he was serving our country in the Navy, and that's what brought me to Virginia. I only visited Virginia one time before I came out here. So I don't know, do we have any Virginia natives here who are joining us today? I love it. Well, if you can, speaking of online communication, in the chat, just give me your home state if you don't mind sharing that information. So I'm also a certified life coach practitioner. So in addition to what I do at TCC, I am a certified life coach practitioner, and I help people with their individual goals. And I also train life coaches. So far I've had the opportunity to train about 80 coaches and counting. And also I am a television host. I have Say Life TV. It is on Channel 4 out in the Hampton Roads area. and online. And before I started working as a professor here at TCC, I was in the field of communication, as I still am. And I was working in television news and also in radio. And so I'm a musician. I don't have my flute today. I know I had done a video some time ago where I brought my flute. Sorry, guys, it's in the car. And as I mentioned, wife of a veteran. I'm a former caregiver. I tell people I was grateful to care for my mom for 9 months before she passed, in that she carried me for 9 months, and I got to care for her for 9 months at our home in Virginia. And I have 2 very funny dogs, of whom I do not have a photo of right now, but their names are Happy and Serendipity, aka Dippy.
Ooh.
So that just also says a little bit about me. Okay, so we've got New Jersey, Georgia, West Virginia. I've never been to West Virginia. Awesome. Virginia and North Carolina by way of New Jersey. Okay, so New Jersey in the house on today. I love it. Very cool. And I'm going to put Mississippi. That's where I'm from. Spelling it right would be helpful. Okay, so today I want to ask some questions. All right, so give me a 1 in the chat if you've ever done this. Okay, so have you ever sent an email or was preparing to send an email and read over it like 5 times before you sent this email? Maybe you were applying for a job, or maybe you were sending an email or a text to a loved one, or something like that. So you have to like just kind of review it and revise it. Okay, let me see. Yes, I'm seeing a lot of 1s. I love it. Okay, so put a 2 in the chat if you hit send before you can even think about what's on the page. Don't be shy. Okay, yes, I'm seeing it too. Thank you for your transparency. Yes, awesome. All right. So give me a 1 in the chat. This is great. Give me a 1 in the chat if you have sent a text message to a friend or family member or something like that, and it was totally misconstrued. Yes, I'm seeing the ones coming in. I love it. Okay, hold on. Got to put mine in here too. Okay, so now I want you to put a 3 in the chat if you said something that could be misconstrued, but you had to put a little emoji to it just to make sure that nobody was offended. Yes. I love it. So what we're going to be talking about, go ahead and put my 3. I'm going to put my, well, yeah, I think, yeah, I'll put my 3 in there as well. Did I? Here we go. Okay. So today what we're going to be talking about, online communication. However, more specifically, we're going to be talking about being a high self monitor or a low self monitor. So what is, and we're going to actually take a quiz. And so let's see, it would be great if we could get the link. Okay. So I'm not sure if people who just joined in can see the link in the chat, but I'll re-put it in here. Here's our quiz. Okay, so I just put the quiz in there. It's really simple. You don't have to enter in your email address or anything. So I encourage you, even while I'm sharing now, to take just a few minutes, and I want to talk about our results. So click the link. Let me know if you guys are having any trouble with that. And so I am actually just going to, let's see. I'm just going to play a little bit of thinking music while you guys take the quiz very quickly. So let me know if you are able to get in it. And once you get finished, if you could put done in the chat. Scroll down halfway down the page to get to the actual quiz part. guys about 20, 30 more seconds. And if you're just coming in, no worries. Continue to work on your quiz. Right? Like a midway button. I get it. Yes. Because some of the questions are very like night and day. It's like sometimes. So yes. And I forgot to mention kind of when you're taking these, sometimes the first, which may also say if we're a high or low self-monitor, to kind of say the first thing that pops into your mind as far as the quiz. All right. Okay. Right. Agreed. All right. So we will. Okay, perfect. Okay. So I am interested to hear or to see in the chat if you were a high self-monitor or a low self-monitor. Okay, so if anybody would like to speak out and share what your experience or what your quiz results said, and if you agree or disagree with them, I'd love to hear it, or you can type it into the chat. What I want to hear from you guys. I'll share mine. And until somebody would like to share. I am a high self-monitor. I'm a high self-monitor. I'm going to put mine in the chat too. Okay, we've got a low self-monitor, another high self-monitor. Anybody else? Anybody who, okay, it didn't show up? Okay. I wonder if it may be a pop-up blocker. Well, it didn't pop up on my end. I would, yep, click see your results. Okay, high self-monitor. Okay. Were any of you, oh no, I don't know why it's not working. But you may have to refresh, and I'll just ask, and I'll tell you guys what a high self-monitor and a low self-monitor is. Was anybody who was able to see the results surprised at the results? Any of you were surprised? Okay. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that. And for those of you who weren't able to see your results, I apologize. I would encourage you later to refresh and try the quiz again. But I'm going to talk about what high and low self-monitors are. So that way, by the description, you may be able to see if you are a high or a low self-monitor. So feel free to go ahead, continue to, for those of you who have not finished yet, feel free to do that. I also wanted to just share some other resources when you are talking about self-awareness, really looking inward. And also, and really just taking that time just to explore who you are. There was a point where, so funny, when I had just finished college and I was younger and kind of, getting out and, on my own feet, and I didn't have a TV yet. And I had a lot of time for self-awareness and for, self-monitoring because I didn't have a TV. At that point, I was waiting on my internet connection. So I really just had to be with me. And whether you're a high self-monitor or a low self-monitor, it's really important just to spend that time to explore and get to learn more about yourself. And we're going to talk about how that is going to apply to what you are doing. And many of you, in many of your online classes. Now, let me just so I can get an idea, give me a 1 in the chat if you are, or just a yes, I guess. You can say yes if you are taking any type of online class okay, yes, we've got some low self-monitors. Awesome. I'm so glad y'all were able to get those results. Give me a yes if you're taking any type of online class this semester, or a no if you're not. Yes, which is pretty much, I think everybody in some way, shape, or form is having an online class. Okay, awesome. So here are just some other, I just wanted to kind of get that information. So here are some other tips or some other activities that you can do in your own time. One that I really like is the personality test. It's a 16 personalities test. And not to say, oh my gosh, when, if I get this type, then that means that's all who I am. Not at all, because, we're multifaceted people. There's so many different aspects of ourselves. Even as mentioned in the chat, you may be one way in one context, and then you go to a party or you're with your friends and you're in a different context. So it's really important just to not let that define who you are, but just to help give yourself some information. Some other activities, which I thought about doing, but I wanted to do that high and low self-monitor test today, is writing a letter to yourself, writing a letter to your younger self, writing a letter to your future self. A fun activity that you can do that I actually did at a conference is that we wrote a letter. Gosh, I've got to read that. Wrote a letter to my future self. And then the conference organizers mailed it to us. And they didn't tell us when they were going to mail it to us. They just, one day in the mail, it's like, oh, what's this? Wow. And as I'm talking about it now, some of the things that I wrote to my future self actually came to manifest. So yay, very cool. Would definitely encourage you to try that. And then also monitoring your emotions. This is something that we actually have done in our interpersonal communication class, where you spend some time, you literally just take a notebook or a piece of paper, and then throughout the day, just kind of monitoring how you're feeling. And sometimes we may have these triggers or things like that that can, kind of catapult us into this downward spiral or catapult us into this, experience of joy and happiness and things like that. But sometimes we're not quite aware of what that may be. So that is helpful in order to do that. And also something else that I would encourage everybody to try is just monitoring your self-talk. Is your self-talk generally positive? Is it not so positive? Because it's important to be mindful of what's going on in the soundtrack of your mind that's playing over and over and over again all day, every day. Okay, so these are just some other things that may be helpful for you. So probably what some of you guys are thinking, like, okay, cool, life coach, how does self-awareness apply to online communication? How does self-awareness apply to what I'm doing in school? How does it apply to what we're doing in this new online communication e-learning world? Okay, yes, great comment. 5 to 10 years ago, I probably would have resulted as a high self-monitor versus a low self-monitor as resulted today. If you don't mind sharing, I would love to hear why you think that. If you can, feel free to type in the chat. Yeah, I'd love to hear what helped make that shift for you. So feel free to type, and when it comes through, I'll definitely share. So even though some of you may be taking oh, yes. Oh, I didn't know if you're.
No, yeah, I can chime in real quick.
Yes,
I
please.
just want to say that just based off of the context of low self-monitor, it says that means that I'm always you, no matter the context. Just using that as a kind of a guidepost. I think 5 or 10 years ago, I would not have been me, no matter the context. I would have conformed to whatever my environment was, and a lot of that had to do with my own self-confidence and and my comfort levels in environments, and really just understanding a little bit more about myself and things that are really important to me. And I think now that I've seasoned a little bit and I have some of that under me and I've just experienced more things in my life, I think that I bring me wherever I am more so than bending and flexing to the environment.
Wow. And if you could kind of summarize does that make you feel empowered? Does that make you feel like secure or happy? Like, how does that make you feel coming to that realization just then?
Definitely like, confident. I feel like it's just an authenticity thing, that I'm authentically me, and I try to be authentically me in the environments I present myself in. I think that's kind of the best way I can be. So yes, definitely confident and definitely more empowered.
Awesome.
To
High five.
anything.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate your transparency and thank you for sharing that. I think that's definitely a message for a lot of people. Thank you. Yes. So one way, or some different ways that we can use self-awareness when it comes to communicating online is, if any of you are taking synchronous classes, synchronous online classes, meaning where you guys, maybe you log on to Zoom at a certain time or things like that. You know, being present, being aware of yourself, so that way you can be present and show up, you know, for these commitments, for your classes, for those other things that you have. Maybe it may be a student government meeting, or it may be a garden club meeting, or whatever that may appear to be. It's important to be mindful of you as you're going through that as well. So just really just some simple tips that kind of come without saying, but I always just like to focus on, and I'm going to skip a couple of slides here and go talk about that part. Let's see. Okay, so just some, okay, here we go. Just some video conferencing netiquette. I always like to make mention of, be mindful of your background. Certainly now there's so many options. There's, you know, virtual backgrounds and things like that. You know, plain white wall. If you haven't made up your bed that day, and, you know, maybe there's somebody, you know, your spouse is still asleep, you know, that probably isn't the best background for your classes. So just to be mindful of those things as well. And, you know, sometimes you think like, oh, you know, that's pretty common. Nobody's going to, you know, but I just want to reiterate, it's important to be mindful of some of those things, because I've definitely had a chance to see a lot. So I think it's important to be mindful of your background. Leave it at that. Step 2, try to minimize distractions. I have 2 German Shepherd Aikido mixes who love my attention. So whenever I'm having a meeting, I make sure either they're in their other room or something like that. And even like a microphone like this kind of helps to minimize some of the outside noise. So even if they do bark, as they will, just be sure to, you know, to try your best to minimize distractions, or to mute your sound as you're coming in. Treat your video conference as you would an in-person meeting. And I think sometimes when you're going to an in-person meeting, as I know some of us, it's been a really long time since you've had a chance to do that. You know, chances are you probably wouldn't like put your feet on the library table and, you know, like fall asleep. Well, hopefully not, but be mindful of how you would be present in an in-person meeting. Now, certainly nobody can see if you have on heels or flats or things like that, but just be mindful of that as you are going into your classes and also your meetings, because it still is class, it still is a meeting, albeit a different medium. Also, be mindful of your body language. So since I've been talking with you all today, I've been using my hands, I've been using my face, you know, using various gestures as I would if I was talking to you in person. Also, camera positioning, which I can even reposition mine now so you can see more of these hand motions and things like that I'm utilizing. And also, I mean, generally, seeing the underside of your nose and chin is not the best position for a camera. So just to be mindful of that. You guys, I know you can't see it, but I literally have my computer on a stack of these chargers and a microwave. What is it? The thing that you cover your food in the microwave, just to make sure that it's kind of on eye level. And you guys, I'm 5'11" and a half. So, you know, I have to kind of adjust to make sure that it meets my eye level. So be mindful of that. And then also you could use a box, a crate, something like that. And it doesn't have to be like you're shooting a, you know, you know, an award-winning show or something like that, but always just to make sure, okay, yes, use board games to prop the computer up. That's good. To eye level. Yes. And then also to be an active listener. Be an active listener. So while we were on that topic, I just wanted to talk a little bit about netiquette and how many of you, and you can certainly write it in the chat, or you can just kind of say, yes, me, oh my gosh, have seen some, how can I put it, some violations of some of that netiquette in this season of being online. Okay, yes, I'm seeing some head nods, and that's okay if you may have made some of those. Okay, yes, no worries. And so it's great to just be mindful of that. Okay, yes, same, same. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about self-monitoring and to share about how you can utilize that to be more present in what you're doing through and through your classes, and really just in life. I want this to be something that can be of help to you. So self-monitoring, it's a personality characteristic. It makes you either pay closer to a certain situation so that they may change or not change their behaviors to fit that situation. So it was so important, I had to just put it on that page twice. So a low self-monitor is one who, as we talked about today, they prefer to be seen as they really are. Some people will say hashtag no filter. They will say what's on their minds, regardless of who's around. They're less likely to conform to the norms of social settings, maybe less sensitive to social cues, or less likely to change their behavior from one situation or another. And so a high self-monitor is the opposite. A high self-monitor will be more likely to change their social cues. They may be considered more adaptable or flexible or things like that. And so when you're speaking of putting it into a context of online learning, I think it's important to, still to be yourself, which is a characteristic of a low self-monitor. Not to say that the high self-monitors are not being themselves or not being authentic, but I think it's important to pull from the various groups. And it's okay, even though I know the quiz that we took today was like, you were a total high self-monitor or you're a total low self-monitor. That's not always the case. Like I said, this is just, something for fun, something that can help you gather that information to see how you function best. But I think it's important to pull from both groups. A higher self-monitor may, be doing a speech. I've also taught speech communication here at TCC, and they may see somebody look like, ugh, and they're like, oh my gosh, I said something awful. They're offended. Oh no, I shouldn't have said that. Whereas maybe they forgot that they left the keys in the car at the moment where you're doing your speech or something like that. So I think it also is important to be mindful of some of those social cues that people may give off as well. So important to have a balance of both. So I just wanted to do a quick introduction to low self-monitors, high self-monitors, and how important it is to pull from both. So self-awareness, being knowledgeable of your own character, your feelings, motives, and desires. For example, they use it in the sentence, this process can be painful, but it leads to greater self-awareness. How many of you have gone through a situation that has heightened your self-awareness, even though it may have been difficult? Something that really taught you something about yourself? Yes, I'm seeing some head nods. Absolutely. And so I want to discuss self-awareness. How many of you, and I call this quote unquote the work, yes, I'm seeing some yeses. How many of you have started, when I say doing the work in your life, may not be, grading papers or, doing some assignments for your courses, but when I say work, looking inward and really seeing, I guess, taking that mirror to your own face and saying, wow, these are some changes that I need to make. Okay. Daily. Absolutely. That's good. Yes. All caps. I love it. All the time. Yes. Yes. Great. So for those of you who said yes, I would like to know, what does the work look like for you? What does that work look like for you? I'll share in my personal life. I have, this is not a journal, but I like to write things down, maybe when I get up in the morning or before I go to bed. Okay, sort of. Yes, thank you for sharing. Yes. Anybody would like to share what that work looks like to you personally? And feel free to type it in the chat as well. Accountability. Yes, being able to set some goals and to be held accountable for those goals, whether that's getting accountability from someone else or taking accountability on your own. Journaling, meditation, excuse me, meditation, recounting interactions with others, processing conflicts. Ooh, yes. How many of you, may have had a conversation with someone and then you kind of go about your day and then you come back around and it's like, oh my gosh, did they take it this way? Or that's also another characteristic of a high self-monitor. Meditation, very cool. In reflection and follow-up / follow-through. Yeah, very good. I know we've gotten to hear how that affects your life, but from anybody else who has not had a chance to sound out about that, how has that affected your life? Kind of those daily things that you may do in order to look inward. I know personally, I may have had some, not, I wouldn't call them bad habits, but patterns that recurred in my life that I wanted to not do anymore. And sometimes when maybe a loved one or a family member says, you know what, you always do such and such, it's like, oh, what, me? Oh my goodness. And maybe it's the way that they came to you, kind of built that wall so you weren't able to really see what you looked like in that mirror, but to be able to kind of take that information. Okay, thank you for that information. And to process it and gather it to see if you really do identify with that. And then also to make some changes. hmm Addition by subtraction. Yes, ma'am. Pacing, gratitude, compassion. And I did this when I had a chance to speak earlier this year, but I always just want to do a quick mental health check-in. I know even though, people are starting to kind of get back out there and do things as usual, there's still a lot of changes. So I always just like to ask, totally no pressure, just how are you doing? In the midst of this, I know many of you are still at home. There's a lot that has changed. There may be even some of you who have been affected by the coronavirus, even some family members of yours. So I just also want to just to check in and see how each of you are doing. So feel free to put that in the chat if you'd like to share. Okay. So I also, when it comes to online communication and being present, I also want to make sure that I am here and that I allow some space to answer your questions. If you have any particular questions about how you can step into a space of being more aware when it comes to your online classes. So I just want to put that in there. Let's see. And I'm also going to give you some tips. So feel free to go ahead, even though I'll move forward, feel free to go ahead and type some things in the chat if you like. So some things to be mindful of when it comes to self-awareness and how that applies to your classes, helping others feel welcome. I know in our online classes, we have a post that says, introduce yourself. And so think about it. If you are in a regular classroom and somebody comes in, ideally, you just wouldn't be like, and then just like kind of get back to your regularly scheduled programming. You usually say, hey, or, say hello or something like that. So online, we even have to be more aware about doing that to allow people to really feel, hey, you know what, I'm welcome here. I'm interested in what you have to say. When you're having maybe discussion boards and you're writing back and forth to your classmates and things like that, instead of kind of saying, that was good, period. Just really engage them as you would if you were having a conversation with them. Misconstrued messaging. No all caps, please, as I wrote in all caps. Just that kind of goes back to etiquette as well. Some people may misconstrue that as yelling or being upset or things like that, which again, going back to misconstrued messaging, everybody is not used to communicating online or, the different kind of etiquette that people will adhere to when they are talking online. So for some people, it may be, I just like writing in all caps, so that may be something to clarify as you are communicating with your professors. Another thing, from the professor standpoint, if you are communicating with your teachers, it's important to just kind of how you would normally talk to your professor in person. Hey, excuse me, do you mind? Or is it possible, instead of kind of just going in and saying, hey, where's this? Because you would normally have a conversation with that person instead of just kind of, rah. So I don't know how else to put that in words. So just being mindful, or even if you're talking to your classmates, to say, hey, or how is it going? Just to be, I don't know, polite. So be aware, be mindful. And I think sometimes when we're writing emails or when we're sending messages, we're just trying to get that message across. But to also be mindful that there's another person on the other side of the screen who has, as well as from my perspective of being a professor, I understand that many of you have so many other classes and you have families and other things that you are attending to. So I want to take that into consideration as I'm talking to you as well. Okay. Yes. Oh, awesome. Ms. Hare says mental wellness is work I have to be intentional about doing every day, but it's worth it. I think it's harder living in the flux right now, transitioning back to work partially. Yes, engaging in the community activities in adapted ways than the extremes. Everything is close or stay home or normal. Yeah. And thank you. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that. Uh, and being, that's another word that actually really just stood out to me just then. I got a couple chill bumps. Being intentional. And I think that can apply to our lives, our goals, our classes, uh, interacting with other people online and being present in our classes uh, is being, it's something that we have to be intentional about because one, it's really new. It's really new. It's really different. And so just to take that time to just be mindful and be aware. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And definitely, I would encourage each of us to be intentional and be mindful about that work that we have to do inside each day. And speaking of that, goes to my last point, which is have some grace, have some patience, and certainly grace and patience with other people. But sometimes we have to have grace and patience with ourselves, and be gentle with yourself as you step into this new space of of your schooling, of life, of your education, and also to know that, hey, sometimes there's a learning curve. We're not at all the same level when it comes to online communication, and that's okay. How many of you maybe have a family member or friend that since all of this started, you kind of find yourself being like their tech support lately? Yes, or maybe you are calling on your children or your nieces and nephews or friends to be your tech support lately. Yeah, absolutely. Ms. Phillips says there's so much coming toward us during the course of the day, whether it be, yes, political climate, COVID, family, finances, have to ensure that's good. By the end of the day that she's cleared her emotions so that she can rest well. Oof, that's good. I usually feel strong and happy when I get up after I've cleared at the end of the day. Wow. That's, in fact, I'm just going to write that down for myself because that's a great note to be able to just kind of release all that before going to bed because it's a lot, and I know a lot of you are dealing with a lot. hmm Yes, and I see. Yes, she says yes. Sylvester says number 2. Um, that's a great point. How do you guys? How do you take care of yourself, especially in the midst of all that's going on? And I know that's not necessarily, well, I guess it does fold into being self-aware, but in the midst of all that may be going on in your lives, how do you personally take care of yourself? It could be, like something that Ms. Phillips mentioned about just clearing her emotions at the end of the day. But anybody want to share? Feel free. You can speak out or just type it in the chat or just even think about it because maybe that's something that we have to be more intentional about. Awesome. Okay, so like I said, we talked about this earlier, some of the video conferencing etiquette, so I won't go over that part again. And I also want to ask, are there any questions? Are there any questions, comments, thoughts that you'd like to share? Oh, yes, music, jazz lover, absolutely. Yes. Yes, shout out to those tech support family and friends. Yes, I know many people are, not only learning online now, but they may be attending worship services or church services online or webinars, trainings, meetings, all of those things. I've learned a whole lot about Zoom. I bet Zoom is pretty happy these days. Started going for more walks around the neighborhood. Absolutely. It's something. I saw this meme online, honestly, and I think it said, before all of this, the pandemic and everything, people were kind of, watching TV in their homes. And now that many are required to kind of be close to home, we've been taking that opportunity to go on walks and to be outside and to get some air. Yes, absolutely. Great weather. I love it. Okay. Well, even if you think of some questions afterward, okay, here's some of my sources, but I will put my email address in the chat. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So like I said, if there's no questions, or even if there's something that we did not talk about today that you'd like to get some insight from communication professional about, definitely feel free to reach out now or share that in the chat and let me know. But I want to thank you for being present and aware, and for your attention and participation. Oh, yes, gardening. I love it. Yes, I love all these hobbies. I know there's a garden club at TCC too, so there's that. Yes.
Ms. Lassiter, I was just going to ask, so what if you're the recipient of someone that you mentioned earlier that, you know, you type an email and you send it off and it's just kind of like shoot first, ask questions later. But what if you're the recipient of that email in regards to like the communication, how you communicate back? Like, do you have any tips or suggestions on how to not escalate a situation, but kind of neutralize some of the things that you might receive? Or especially, you know, you mentioned too, the use of emojis and the fact that texting and email and stuff, that there's no tone context there. So, you know, what if you don't understand, or what if you're taking something the wrong way? I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on that from a help us be better kind of standpoint.
That's a great question. I'm happy you asked. So what I do sometimes when I get an email where it's like, hey, do this or something like this, I'm like, hello, how are you doing today? Which, is that the best way to go about it? I don't know, but that's how I go about it. It's like, you know, even if somebody, you know, gives me a call or a text, hey, you know, I'm like, hello, how are you? Great. You know, so I like to kind of let them know, I show myself, you know, friendly, and I say, you know, then I get into the content of what it is that they've asked. And so also some tips, if you will, on how to improve that. Again, just imagine like if you saw that person in the hallway on campus, you know, would you just, you know, go into, you know, the particular content that you want to discuss, or would you be like, hello, hey, or even hey, or something like that? And then also for those who kind of feel that you may just write this message and just pew, just fire, like go, and may not even think about it, at least read over it once. Imagine that you're receiving the message and you're reading over it. And two, it also kind of, again, this is me, high self-monitor here, I tend to over anticipate miscommunication, because the way that I'm writing it is going to be different than the way that somebody else may read it. So I like to anticipate, you know, I just want to make sure that this is going to be construed. And honestly, if that person takes it out of context, I don't want to say, well, it's on them. However, if I do my due diligence to try to make sure it's crafted in a way that's going to be well received, or that I'm getting my point across. And you know what, if you ever have a miscommunication, which that happens, that's why you have conversations to try to mitigate some of those things or to resolve some of it. So as far as kind of overall tips, I would just say be open. Mistakes happen, miscommunication happen. I think that's going to happen as long as we're people, but we can definitely do what we can on our end to make sure that doesn't happen as much or as often. Also, various teachers are different. Some teachers may use emojis or smiley faces, some may not. And I think too, you know, it just also, you know, and for any students who are on today, don't be afraid to get to know your professors. You know, say hello when you get into the class, especially because it's not like where you're walking into a classroom and they're there. Feel free to send an email at the beginning of the semester or even in the middle. Hey there, I just want to say hello. Just want to get to, you know, to introduce myself or things like that. And that way you can get to know your professors, get to know your classmates, reach out to them as well. Yes. Okay. So, did that answer your question? Awesome. So let's see. I'm seeing some of the comments. Okay. So I will have a question for the students who are on today. When you're taking your synchronous classes, when you're like you're all in class together, do you feel weird or awkward or hesitant to speak out? Or like if you're replying to your teacher or things like that? Tell me, do you feel free and safe to speak out when you're in your classes? when you're in your synchronous classes. So feel free to type that in or say it aloud. Okay, awesome, Sylvester. Great. And also, okay, great. Very good, Aiden. Oh, okay. So in the main class, it was good, but breakouts were difficult. Any one of you who are on today, have you had that experience where talking in the breakout rooms were difficult? I really wish I had brought some of these memes that I found because there was one that talked about the exact same thing. It was like everybody in the breakout room, everybody was just looking in different directions, not saying anything. Okay, tell me if you don't mind sharing, what is the thing? Okay, Aiden says not too bad. Danny says yes. If you don't mind sharing, for those of you who felt that talking in a breakout room was difficult, to share with me, what is it that's kind of that nerve-wracking part about speaking out in a breakout room? And kind of even, and feel free to go ahead. You know, what Ms. Phillips posted is that in the past, overanalyzing and paralyzing did not allow her to make an important contribution, kind of overthinking maybe how it's going to be received and things like that. And so that may even be to play when it kind of comes to speaking out in the breakout rooms. And, you know, some tips that may help. Certainly, okay, it seems as if everyone is a bit nervous to talk over one another. Yes, yes. And it's different because in a classroom setting where everybody's there, you can kind of tell when somebody's getting ready to share something. You may see them say, oh, okay, or they may, you know, you may can kind of pick up on that. But when you're online, unless everybody's camera's on, and even if it is on, there may be a little lag or a little delay. So it's like, you know. So definitely some tips that can be used. As I mentioned, miscommunications happen. And I think, you know, in a Zoom meeting, sometimes talking over one another, even today, because I have an internet lag from where I'm at, you know, so sometimes, you know, when someone who wants to speak out, it may happen, but just to know it may happen, and that's okay, and to adjust. And even, you know, the chat feature is very helpful for those who may feel uncomfortable. And so I think too, it's okay to utilize that. Ako Taco, without being comfortable without being comfortable with the people in the room. It's like 20 minutes in an elevator, just kind of everybody kind of looking around and just, you know, don't want to get too close. Yeah, I totally understand that for sure. But no, thank you for sharing that experience, Danny. And I think too, you know, yes, whoo, that can be a whole nother session, Miss Phillips, with the introverts and extroverts. And I won't get too deep into that today, but you know, there are some who, and I think also going to high self monitors or low self monitors who will just kind of blurt out, you know, what they're thinking and not really, I don't want to say not care, because that's, you know, I think that's just too night and day, but, you know, they may not be too concerned about how it's going to be received. They want to say what's on their heart, their authentic, true feelings, and they want to get it out there. Whereas your higher self monitor will just do that. They'll monitor themselves a little bit at a higher level and say, well, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, I want to make sure this atmosphere is cultivated so that, you know, nobody's talking over one another or things like that. So I think there it's also helpful for, if you find yourself on one end of that continuum, to kind of practice, and it is a practice, from drawing from some of the others. Again, you know, I am a high self monitor, and I think in, you know, when I was in school, and just depending on certain contexts, it would be harder for me to be like I think of something, like, I don't know if any of you have been in this situation, like you'll think of something like after the meeting, and it was like, oh, that would be so good if I said that during that meeting or during this situation, which I think happens for both high and low self monitors alike sometimes. And then, you know, on the point of introversion introverts and extroverts. You have some ambiverts. You have some extroverted introverts. You have some introverted extroverts who love being around people, but just, would rather not say a whole lot and just be around. I think I am an extroverted introvert. I love having that time to myself and, just to recharge and things like that. But I also like to talk, as I'm doing today. Anybody can resonate with that. Okay, awesome. And thank you so much for sharing your transparency, Doris. And when you say not used to this, you mean like kind of the online, everybody talking online and going to class online and things like that? I want to make sure I'm clear. Mm-hmm. And also a question for you, Doris. And again, you could certainly put this in the chat, or you could just think about it, either one. If you were in an in-person environment, would you like to contribute to some of the conversations and things like that going on in your classes? So like I said, feel free, you can totally share that with us, or you could, just kind of to ponder on it. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? Yes, definitely. It is. Yes. Very different. Very different. I remember when I was in college and I had heard about somebody taking a class online, and I was like, what? How can you do that? It's online. Here we are. Okay.
So I
Any
just
other
want to,
points
oh,
from
sorry.
anybody else? I'm so glad that, yeah, go ahead. Oh, Exhibit A. No worries.
Yes. I just want to say that, I think how we communicate in this environment, if I was in a class, I would absolutely chime in and have conversation. But even in this platform, I would certainly pause and wait to see if someone else might say something. So, but it's definitely an adaptation to like how I would engage and how I engage. Once I'm comfortable on the platform and with the people that are in my group, I don't hesitate though. So I think it's very much about that comfort level. And I'm wondering if students and faculty in the online environment shouldn't be more intentional about finding ways to break down the barriers at the beginning, so students have that more comfortable environment on the backside when the instruction is occurring.
Mm-hmm. Now, it was breaking up just a little bit on my end, but correct me if I'm wrong. You were saying kind of spending more time getting introduced, getting comfortable, getting to know who you're going to be in the class with that course or that semester. That may also help kind of cultivate that environment to have more open and meaningful communication. Okay, yes. Awesome. Yes, working to break down the barriers in the class. It's really easy to kind of just slip under the radar sometimes when it comes to online learning. But I think when you are intentional and really making an effort, putting forth an effort to engage just how you would if you were in an in-person class, or as best as you can, as you're as you would do in an in-person class, I think that is helpful to your success.
Professor Lassiter, are you able to share what classes you're teaching in the spring for those individuals
Yes.
who might be interested in taking your class?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing internship this spring. However, if later on you see that there's an internship class from me, I would absolutely love to have you an internship for communication. And generally, I teach interpersonal communication, intercultural communication, and I've also taught intro to communication before. So pretty much all things communication. If you need a communication class, I would love to get to know you in our course, and to also get to help you meet your communication goals. Because even though we do learn a lot about how it works and the communication models and things like that, I am just so grateful when people come to me and say, oh my gosh, I had this great connection or conversation with my spouse or with my child or with my parent or somebody because of what I learned here. And so I'm so glad that some of our students are taking some of what we're learning in class and actually applying it to their lives.
And before you leave us, can you talk a little bit about your experience with in the field of professional communications
Yeah.
and your coaching?
Sure, I'd love to. So, as I mentioned a little earlier, my background is in television news. And so I had a chance to get my bachelor's degree in mass communication with the focus in broadcast journalism, concentration in broadcast journalism, and also my second bachelor's is in Spanish. So, hola everybody. And so after that, I worked in radio in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I had a chance to intern at CNN, Headline News, HLN. Now, I also had an opportunity to intern at WB. Oh, no worries, Doris. I'm glad you're back. No problem. I know there's also going to be a replay as well. But I had a chance to work at WBRZ in Baton Rouge, WVLA in Baton Rouge, TV stations. I had a chance to work in top 5 TV market in Dallas, Texas, KDAF. And I also had a chance to work at Channel 13. So that's where I was working in Norfolk. Left when my husband deployed to care for my mom and hang out with her here in Mississippi. And then I went back into communication, worked in marketing for the first time, which is a really cool opportunity. And I worked with people living with chronic conditions, helping them tell their life stories. And so that was a really cool experience. So like I said, got to produce, got to report, really, worked my way from the bottom rung of the ladder. I was a camera woman. I'd be out there with my little camera and everything. And then also now in the space of coaching where I'm at, I help people move through the world in a positive way, lifting people up, encouraging one another, and coaching, personal development, confident speaking, and through just life and helping them in that journey. So I work with people one-to-one, and also have something called the Say Life Coach Institute, where we've been approved by the International Coach Federation. So far, we've trained about 80 coaches who are walking into their calling and doing coaching. And then we have Say Life TV featured on Sky 4 in Hampton Roads. So yeah, I have my website as well if anybody is interested in learning more information about that. And then also my email address, my elassiter@tcc.edu email address if anybody has any questions. And I also know for those of you who may be in communication, I know it's a challenge sometimes to try to get those internships and jobs and navigating that whole space. So, I would definitely be happy to talk with you via email if there's any questions that you have about navigating the world of communication so you can get a fulfilling job and really help some people out there.
We're so grateful for your time today, Professor Lassiter, and all your contributions that you've made to co-curricular education here at Tidewater Community College, and for your willingness to be a resource to students here. We look forward to collaborating with you again. And for the students, I'm so glad that you've taken time out of your day to support yourself and your personal development. And as Professor Lassiter mentioned, this will be available. The recording for this event will be available in our Virtual Student Center and on the Virtual Student Center YouTube for your peers, your classmates, your family even. So be sure to check back in the Virtual Student Center for access to the recording and asynchronous learning. Thanks again, everyone, for being with us today. Did you have any final remarks, Professor Lassiter, before you leave us?
No, you are so welcome. It's my honor to be here with you all, and thank you guys for having me, and Ms. Phillips for asking me, and thank you guys for all of the thank yous in the comments. You guys inspire me, and seriously, I'm here. So here for support.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.